I'm Judy Knight. I came to Laramie in 1965, especially concentrating on interior design and housing and textiles. And I focused in my studies on the history of all those three things: the history of housing, interior design, and textiles, to persuade them to let me teach that at UW. I would say that Wilbur Hitchcock did not have one style, but he did follow the style trends nationally. He was lucky that he did have a fair number of patrons who had enough money to commission an architect to build a house for them. And I think it became fashionable, if I dare say so, in Laramie to have Wilbur Hitchcock design a house for you. Well, to me it means it looks like it was an architect-designed home. It doesn't look like it was put together by a carpenter only. And it has one of maybe 5 different styles, although I think of Craftsman homes or Tudor Revival homes as being most typical of his style. 1904 or 5 through about the 1920s. And so in his early days in Laramie, there are a lot of plans that are in the Craftsman style. And there are several that are really good examples, but 612 Grand is one of the most obvious. They also tend to be dark. Now there are some that are painted white now, but Craftsman houses tended to be dark. They looked natural. And they kind of went with the arts and crafts style furniture that was just coming in. Originating with Green and Green, the pair of brother architects in Southern California who left a legacy of wealthy clients and beautiful Craftsman style houses, but they were picked up in magazines and talked about a lot. NeoClassic, a range that covers both Greek and Roman inspired designs, and to me, one of his most wonderful designs in Laramie is the Masonic Temple, which is at the corner of 4th and Ivinson. And that building is just a perfect Greek Revival temple kind of building. And as we speak now, in 2011, it has not been modified. There are no additions to it. So it sits as it was when Wilbur did it, and it looks almost exactly like its plans. The Spanish Eclectic is a style that Wilbur Hitchcock did a few examples of in Laramie, with one really prominent example in the Cooper House. Richard Cooper, who commissioned him to do the biggest house that he did in Laramie, namely the Cooper House. That client obviously was able to afford a lot of extras that you don't tend to see in the more modest houses that Wilbur Hitchcock did. One of my favorites is 200 South 10th, which is the first residential design that I find in Wilbur Hitchcock's plans for Laramie. So this was done in 1909 when he was an undergraduate at UW, and it was built almost exactly as it was designed. It's been a little bit remodeled now. Somebody put a rather elaborate entablature on the front door, which was not part of the original plan. Bode, or Bode, B-O-D-E, who was a music professor at UW, and he also commissioned Hitchcock to build a little practice studio and place where he gave lessons at the back of that property, which it had a succession of owners, and it did become a fraternity, a nurse's residence for the nurses at the hospital that was built by Wilbur Hitchcock across the street. And then there's the Art Deco style that was coming in as his career was getting in full gear, and I would say that County Courthouse is an excellent example of that, in which now decoration is getting very pared down and somewhat a little bit gradational lines, repeating some design elements. The courthouse is a little bit different than typical Art Deco. Well, bungalows are modest houses, 1 story, maybe a story and a half. They generally follow the style lines of Craftsman, but they're modest, and they will have some asymmetrical details often. The bungalow is a little bit different from a folk house in that it does have these Craftsman styling details. Early on, I was inspired by Winston Churchill's remark that we shape our buildings and afterwards our buildings shape us. I would say that of all the arts, and architecture is an art, it's the most visible to anybody. You drive down a street, the houses are there, the buildings are there. You don't have to open a door and go into a museum to see the paintings or whatever it is that is part of art history. Our built environment is our environment.